Deep within the obsidian void, the most powerful stories are waiting to be told to those who dare to listen. Join our journey into the unknown, where the stakes are high and the revelations are even deeper. Hit subscribe now and let the void reveal its greatest secrets today.
I still remember exactly what the house smelled like when I walked in that Tuesday afternoon. Coffee gone cold on the counter, and something else underneath it, something sharp and wrong. The way a room smells when someone has been crying for a long time and tried to hide it before you arrived. My wife Margaret was sitting at the kitchen table with her hands folded in her lap, like she was waiting to be told what to do. Her eyes were dry, but the skin around them was swollen and raw. She looked up when she heard my keys, and for one brief second her face broke open, not into a smile, not into relief, but into something I had no name for. Then she pulled it closed again, the way you pull a coat tight against the wind. I set my jacket on the chair across from her. I did not say anything at first. After 41 years of marriage, I have learned that some moments need a breath before they need words. Then our son stepped in from the hallway. He was dressed the same as always, neat, calm, that easy confidence he had worn since he was 18 years old. He looked at me and said, without missing a beat, "Dad, she's just tired. You know how she gets in the afternoons." Something about the way he said it, the speed of it, the smoothness landed wrong inside me, like a floorboard that sounds hollow when you step on it. "Tired," I said. "She didn't sleep well." He was already moving toward the refrigerator, pulling it open, scanning the shelves as if he lived there. I stopped by to check on her, and she was already like this. My wife did not look at him when he spoke. She looked at the table. That was the detail that stayed with me long after everything else faded. Not the redness around her eyes, not the untouched coffee, not even the way her hands stayed folded so carefully still in her lap. The way people hold themselves still when they are afraid that any movement might betray them. It was that she did not look at him. 41 years. I know every expression my wife owns, and I had never once seen her refuse to look at our own son. I pulled a chair close and sat beside her. I covered her hands with mine. They were cold, not the cold of a chilly afternoon, but the deep, bone-level cold that comes from shock. "Maggie," I said quietly, "tell me what happened." She opened her mouth. Then our son laughed from across the kitchen, not a cruel laugh, just a light, dismissive sound, and said, "There's nothing to tell, Dad. She's been forgetful lately. She got upset over nothing. You know how it is." My wife closed her mouth again. I looked at him for a long moment. He met my eyes with the steady, patient look of a man who believes he has the situation completely under control. "Give us a minute," I said. He shrugged pleasantly, took his coffee into the living room. I leaned close to Margaret and kept my voice very low. "Did he do something to you?" She looked toward the hallway, then back at me. Her lips pressed together until the color drained out of them. "I'm fine," she whispered. "Please, not now." There was a word inside that whisper that she hadn't said out loud. I heard it anyway. "Please. Not now. Not while he's still here." I stayed beside her until our son finished his coffee and made his excuses and left unhurried, cheerful, saying he'd call tomorrow. The door closed behind him. I heard his car back out of the driveway. And in the silence that followed, my wife let out a breath so long and so ragged that it sounded like something unraveling. "Maggie," I said. "Not yet," she murmured. "Tomorrow. Let me tomorrow." I helped her to bed early that evening. I sat in the armchair by the window until past midnight, listening to her breathe, watching the shadows shift across the ceiling. My mind kept returning to one thing, the way she had not looked at him. The next morning I got up before dawn. Margaret was still sleeping, and I stood in the kitchen drinking coffee in the dark and thinking about the past several months, thinking about how our son had started coming by more often, how he had started referring to us gently, casually, the way you ease something into a conversation as getting older, how he had begun involving himself in things we had never asked him to touch, offering to manage the bills, offering to drive Margaret to her doctor appointments, offering, always offering, with that pleasant, unhurried confidence, and us accepting because he was our son, and we loved him, and it felt like being cared for. When Margaret came downstairs, she looked like she had not slept at all. We sat together at the table, and for a while neither of us spoke. Then she set down her cup and looked at me with an expression I had seen only twice before in our life together, once when her mother died, once when we lost a pregnancy before our children were born. The expression of someone about to say a thing they cannot unsay. "He's been asking me to sign things," she said. I kept very still. Started about 4 months ago. Small things first. He said they were financial forms. Reallocation of retirement funds for our benefit, he said, so we wouldn't have to manage it ourselves. She paused. I didn't understand them. I told him I wanted you to look them over. He said you'd just worry. He said it was routine. Did you sign them? She looked down at her hands. Some. I felt a cold, slow heaviness settle in my chest. Last week he brought different papers. Durable power of attorney. For both our finances and medical decisions. He said it was what responsible families do at our age. He said if either of us got sick and couldn't communicate, without it, everything would be a nightmare. She stopped. I told him I needed time to think. That's when She swallowed. He grabbed my arm. Right here. She pulled back her sleeve. The bruise was there. Yellow-green at the edges, dark purple at the center, the shape of fingers. I stood up from the table. I stood up because I could not sit still with what was moving through me. He grabbed me and he said, Mom, stop being difficult. You're not going to live forever, and neither is Dad. Sign the papers, or I'll make sure you both end up somewhere neither of you wants to be. Her voice did not shake. By then, she had no shaking left. He was my son, and he said that to me in my own kitchen. I went to the window. I stood looking out at the yard. The yard where I had watched that same son learn to ride a bike, catch fireflies, throw a baseball, and I breathed until I was sure I could speak without my voice betraying everything inside me. Did you sign? No. She was quiet for a moment, but he took the papers when he left. He said he'd be back. That afternoon, while Margaret rested, I went to the small room off the garage where I keep my tools and my workbench, and, along the back wall, an old NAS unit I installed years ago when we had a break-in on the street, and I wanted some peace of mind. 4 cameras. Front door, back door, driveway, kitchen, motion activated, continuous local recording for 30 days before it overwrites. I had checked it exactly once since installation. A raccoon getting into the trash in 2019. I sat down in front of the monitor and scrolled back 4 months. What I found in those recordings, I will carry for the rest of my life. Not because of what I saw in the most recent files, though what I saw there was enough to stop my heart, but because of what I found when I went further back. Our son's visits, which I had believed were casual drop-ins, were not casual. They followed a pattern. Always on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. The days I worked the consulting shift at the firm downtown. Always between noon and 3. Always when Margaret was alone. I watched him sit across from her at the kitchen table with folders and papers spread out between them like a man conducting a meeting. I watched him speak to her for long stretches while she listened with that careful, still posture she had worn when I came home. I watched her shake her head. And I watched him lean forward and tap the papers with his finger. Again and again. And I watched her fold her hands in her lap and look at the table. The same posture. Every visit. For 4 months. I advanced to the most recent recording, the afternoon I had come home to find her like that. I watched it without sound at first. Then I turned the volume up. I will not repeat every word. Some of it I am still not ready to say out loud. But what I heard was my son's voice, low and flat and stripped of every warmth, telling my wife that she was no longer capable of making good decisions, that I was not capable either, that the money and the house and everything we had built would disappear inside 5 years if someone with a clear head didn't take control, that he was trying to protect us, and if we couldn't see that, then maybe the state would have to be the one to make decisions for us instead, that there were facilities, that there were legal processes, that she should think carefully about whether she wanted to go that route. And then I watched him stand up and lean over her. And I watched her pull back. And I watched him take her arm. I turned off the monitor. I sat in the dark of that small room for a long time. I was 64 years old. I had worked for 40 years, raised 2 sons, built a life inside that house, and I had never in my life felt a rage so quiet and so absolute as what I felt sitting in that room looking at a dark screen. When I was calm enough to move, I did 3 things. I copied the recordings to 2 separate drives. I put one in my truck and one in the lockbox bolted to the floor of the bedroom closet. I left the originals on the NAS untouched. Then I went inside and I sat next to my wife on the couch, and I held her hand. And I told her I had seen everything. She cried for a long time. Not the contained, exhausted crying I had seen the day before. This was different, deeper and louder, the kind of crying that has been held back so long it comes out almost angry. She cried, and I held her, and I did not say anything, except that I was there, and that it was over, and that I was sorry I had not seen it sooner. When she was quiet again, she said, "He's still going to come back." "I know," I said. "I need you to let him." She looked at me. "I need one more conversation with him," I said, with everything in place. She searched my face for a long moment. Then she nodded, slow, deliberate. And I saw in her eyes the same thing I had seen in her eyes 41 years ago, when we stood in front of our families and made promises to each other. Not innocence. Something harder and more permanent than innocence. Trust. I called our son that evening. I kept my voice easy and tired, which was not entirely a performance. "Your mother told me you've been helping with some paperwork," I said. "I've been thinking about it. Maybe it's time we sat down together, the 3 of us, and sorted through all of it properly." A pause on his end. Measuring. "That's good, Dad," he said finally. "That's really good. I think that's the right call. Come Saturday. We'll go over everything. I'll bring the documents." "Bring everything," I said. I spent the next 2 days making phone calls. To an attorney, a woman my brother had used years ago for an estate matter, sharp and straightforward in the way I needed her to be. To our bank, where I had a quiet conversation with the branch manager that left both of us grim-faced. To my brother himself, who drove 4 hours to be at my house by Friday night, and sat across from me at the kitchen table, looking at what I had recorded with his jaw set and his hands flat on the table, and didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, he said, "How long?" 4 months confirmed on camera. Could be longer. "And Maggie?" She didn't tell me because he told her I'd have a breakdown, that I couldn't handle it, that she'd be putting me in danger. I paused. She was protecting me. My brother looked at the wall. "What do you need me to do?" "Be here Saturday." With the attorney. Saturday morning, Margaret moved through the house quietly. She watered her plants. She folded laundry. She did not eat much breakfast. I watched her and I thought about how much strength it takes to appear ordinary when everything inside you is braced for what's coming. Our son arrived at 11. He came in with a briefcase and a relaxed, easy energy that made me understand, watching him walk through my door, how completely he had convinced himself that what he was doing was reasonable. That is the thing about people who use patience and planning instead of brute force. They find ways to believe their own story. He saw my brother sitting in the living room, and something shifted in his expression, a slight recalibration, like a man adjusting his footing on uncertain ground. "Uncle Ray," he said pleasantly, "I didn't know you were in town." "Came to see your parents," my brother said. I led us all to the dining room. The attorney was in the kitchen out of sight, within earshot, per our arrangement. 2 recorders were running. The kitchen camera was on. I had checked everything twice. We sat down. Our son laid his briefcase on the table and unclasped it and began removing folders with the focused calm of a man who believes he is about to close something important. "Dad, I'm glad we're doing this," he said. "I know it's felt complicated, but once these documents are signed and filed, everything will be a lot simpler for you and Mom. You won't have to think about any of it." "That's what concerns me," I said. He looked up. "I spoke with our bank," I said. and with an attorney. It turns out the documents you had your mother signing over the past 4 months were not routine. The first series reassigned beneficiary designations on 3 of our retirement accounts. The second series authorized transfers from the joint savings account to a single signatory account. In your name. The pleasant expression did not leave his face. It simply went still. Dad, those were protective measures. I also reviewed the camera recordings from the last 4 months, I said. Every visit, every conversation, including last Tuesday. The stillness deepened. I know what you said to her, I said. I know what you did to her arm. For one moment, brief, unguarded, the first real thing I had seen on his face in months, I saw something crack. Then it closed again. You recorded me without my consent, he said, quiet, controlled. That's not admissible. That's not legal. In this state it is, said my brother from the end of the table. One-party consent. Your parents were present. Their home. Their cameras. Our son looked at him, then back at me. The pleasant mask was gone now. What was underneath it was not rage, not yet. It was calculation. He was still looking for the move. Mom, he said, turning to Margaret. You know I was trying to help you. You know how Dad gets, he overthinks, he panics. I was trying to make sure you'd be taken care of. Margaret sat with her hands in her lap. She looked at her son for a long time. And then she said something I had not prepared for. Something she found entirely on her own. I know you love us, she said quietly. I have always known that. But love does not give you the right to put your hands on me. And it does not give you the right to take what we spent our lives building. Something moved across his face then. For a fraction of a second he looked like the boy he used to be, young and caught and suddenly uncertain of everything. Then it was gone. I want a lawyer, he said. That seems right, I said. I reached into my jacket pocket and placed a copy of the drive on the table. This is everything. The original is in a secure location. Copies have already been provided to our attorney. He stared at the drive. The accounts have been frozen, I continued, pending review. The documents your mother signed under duress have been flagged with the bank. Our attorney has filed a formal complaint. You're going to destroy me, he said. Low and flat. You made choices, I said. All I did was document them. He pushed back from the table. He stood up. He looked at me with an expression I cannot fully describe even now. Not pure hate, not pure grief. Something tangled and unresolved between the two. Everything I did was for this family. No, I said. Everything you did was for yourself. You told yourself a story about it. But I watched the recordings. I know the difference. He left without taking his briefcase. After he drove away, the attorney came in from the kitchen and sat down. My brother poured coffee. Margaret sat very still at the table, both hands wrapped around her cup, looking at nothing in particular. What happens now? She asked. The attorney was honest with her, the way I had asked her to be. There would be a formal investigation. The altered account documents constituted financial fraud. Combined with the recorded evidence of coercion and physical force, the case was serious. There could be criminal charges. There would almost certainly be civil proceedings. And the accounts? I asked. The fraudulent transfers will be reversed. It'll take some time, but the documentation is solid. My wife nodded slowly. Her eyes were dry. She had spent all her tears already. That night, after everyone else was gone, we sat together on the back porch in the dark, the way we used to do when the boys were small and finally asleep, and the house was quiet, and the world felt temporarily manageable. The September air was cool. The yard was dark beyond the reach of the porch light. I keep seeing him at 8 years old, she said. Running through that yard. Scraped knees. That laugh he had. I know, I said. When does that go away? I don't think it does, I said. I think you just learn to carry it alongside everything else. She leaned her head against my shoulder. We stayed like that for a long time without talking. In the weeks that followed, the investigation moved forward with a speed and thoroughness that surprised me. The bank's fraud department had been watching certain patterns they could not previously explain. Our complaint gave them the framework they needed. The attorney calls became routine, regular updates. Paperwork, statements to sign. My wife gave her formal deposition on a gray Wednesday morning, sitting in a conference room with her hands folded on the table and her voice steady, working through every detail from the first unusual visit to the bruise on her arm. I sat outside in the hallway and listened to her voice through the closed door, and thought about all the times in 41 years that I had believed I knew exactly how strong she was, and how wrong I had been, not because I had underestimated her, but because I had never imagined a test that would require her to be this strong. Our son hired an attorney. He contested the coercion claim, argued the recordings were misleading, suggested that his mother's memory was unreliable, that I had manipulated her account of events to serve my own purposes. His attorney filed 2 motions and lost them both. He called my cell phone one night, about 3 weeks after the deposition. I almost didn't answer. Then I did. Dad. His voice was different. Something had gone out of it. "I'm here," I said. "Is she okay?" "She's better than she was." Silence on his end. Then, "I didn't think it would go this far." I sat with that sentence for a moment. "How far did you think it would go?" I thought he stopped. "I thought you'd both eventually just accept it. The way you accept everything. I thought it was just a process. That it would be cleaner if you didn't know the details." "Cleaner," I said. "I know how that sounds. Do you?" Another silence. "Am I going to lose everything?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "That depends on a lot of things that are no longer in my control or yours." "Are you glad," he asked, "that it came to this?" I looked out the window at the dark yard. I thought about the recordings, about his voice flat and cold, telling his mother she was not capable of decisions, about the bruise on her arm, about her sitting at the kitchen table with her hands folded and her eyes refusing to find him. "No," I said. "I am not glad. I have not been glad about any of this for a single moment." He hung up. I stayed by the window for a while. Then I went upstairs to where my wife was already asleep, and I sat in the chair by the bed and listened to her breathe deep and steady, no more of the shallow, anxious breathing she'd had for months. And I let myself feel, for the first time, something that was not quite relief but was in the same neighborhood. The resolution came on a Thursday in late November, in a courtroom that was smaller and quieter than I had expected. Our son entered looking reduced, not the confident, polished man who had walked through my door with his briefcase and his pleasant certainty, but something younger and uncertain, moving carefully through a room that had not yet decided what to do with him. The charges were financial fraud, coercion, and 1 count of physical assault. He had entered a plea agreement 2 days before the hearing. The attorney told us it was the right outcome, that it would spare us both a full trial, that the agreement included full restitution of every dollar that had been fraudulently transferred, supervised probation, mandatory counseling, and no contact with us for the duration. When the judge read the agreement into the record, I watched my son. He did not look at me. He looked at the surface of the table in front of him with an expression I recognized from when he was very small and had broken something and was waiting to learn how bad it was going to be. Margaret held my hand through all of it. When the gavel came down, she did not cry. She just exhaled a long, quiet breath and rested her head briefly against my shoulder and then sat up straight again. Outside on the courthouse steps, the late November air was cold enough to see our breath. We stood for a moment before walking to the car. The sky was low and white, the kind of sky that threatens snow without delivering it. "Is it over?" she asked. "The legal part," I said. "The rest takes longer." She pulled her coat tighter. "I don't know how to stop being his mother. I don't know if I'm supposed to." "You're not supposed to stop," I said. "You just have to decide what comes with that and what doesn't." She considered that. Then she took my arm, and we walked to the car, and I drove us home through the gray November afternoon to the house that was ours again, simply, completely, without question ours. That was 7 months ago now. The accounts are fully restored. The fraudulent documents have been voided. Our attorney checks in every few months, a courtesy call more than a necessity at this point. We changed the locks, not because we feared him exactly, but because some lines, once drawn, need to be visible. My wife goes to a counselor on Tuesday mornings. She started sleeping without waking at 3 a.m., sometime around March. She has started cooking again, really cooking, the long Saturday afternoon meals she used to make that filled the whole house with something good. She is not the same as before, but she would be the first to tell you that she is not sure the woman she was before was seeing everything clearly. I am not the same either. I think about our son more than I admit. There are days I pick up my phone and put it back down. There are days I walk past his childhood bedroom. We keep the door open now. No reason to keep it closed, and I see 30 years of a person who was real and complicated and ours, and I do not know what to do with all of that. I am not sure there is a thing to do with it. I think it is just part of what life costs when it asks you to face an unbearable truth and face it anyway. What I do know is this. I came home one afternoon and found my wife sitting at a table that smelled of cold coffee, with her hands folded and her eyes refusing to look at the person who had done it. I almost missed it. I almost accepted the explanation I was given and made my coffee and sat in my chair and let the evening happen the way evenings usually happen. I am grateful every day that something in me did not accept it. Love is not passive. It is not soft agreement and comfortable silence and looking the other way, because looking the other way feels kinder than what looking forward would cost you. After 41 years, I learned that in the hardest possible way. But I learned it, and my wife is watering her plants this morning in the kitchen that belongs to us, humming something I almost recognize, while the coffee brews and the early light comes through the window and the house smells like itself again. That is enough. That is more than enough. If you are watching this and something in what I've told you sounds familiar, if there is a table in your house where someone sits too still, a door that closes with a careful quietness that frightens you more than any slam, a voice that reassures you a little too quickly, trust that feeling. Investigate it. Do not wait until you have no choice. I am Robert, and this is my story. If it reached you, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling me what you would have done in my place. I read every single one. Your presence here gives this story a reason to be told.